Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to a special episode of Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street. In our bonus episodes, we like to give some airtime to stories and individuals that are doing something just that little bit special. Today's guest is Brant Menswar, award-winning speaker, coach and author, and all-round top bloke. Coming up on today's show, Brant makes his play to be considered the coolest guest we've had.
I am a semi-retired rock star turned keynote speaker and author.
Phil discusses his educational limitations. Who's got time to go and learn big words? And Brant wrestles with one humdinger of a story.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide whether or not to tell it.
All that and so much more as we chat through Brant's quite remarkable journey so far. It won't take you long in this chat to learn why Brant is considered one of the top 10 speakers on the US circuit, and this chat has everything you'd ever need: emotion, power and mind-blowing learning. So please don't forget to subscribe and give us a like and a share across your favourite platforms. Enjoy! And a massive Hospitality Meets welcome to somebody on the other side of the pond, as your work husband used to say, and that is none other than Brant Menswar.
Phil, so great to be with you again, brother. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. And I just realised I do this all the time. I get so excited. I'm like a little puppy. We just get straight into it. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yeah, you did.
I did. Okay. That's a surprise. That doesn't often happen.
You're good.
Very good. How are you? What's new?
Neck deep in the new book, trying to make sure we get that thing out there so that it'll see the light of day in 2025. But just finished the new deal with Wiley, and they'll be putting out the book, it looks like, in June of next year. So we are just head down trying to get that over the finish line for everybody.
Right. And this will be your second book.
Yeah, it will be my second book that was, published, not self-published anyways. And so this is the new book's called Designing Momentum. And it's it's not really a sequel to Black Sheep, which came out in 2020, but it's sort of, once you figured out who you are and what matters most, what's next? You've got to build some momentum for yourself to hit those goals. And so that's what this book is all about.
Well, I am all in already. But yeah, we'll totally talk about that in a bit more depth as to where that kind of came from and all of that. Whether it was an original part of your plan, I don't know. But because, well, I suppose the big question is, because the vast majority of our listenership is UK based, we do have, I think there's 142 countries do tune in from time to time, but the US is our second most active listenership, if you like. So they'll probably know who you are, but for the rest of the world, what do you do other than writing books?
Yeah, well, I am a semi-retired rock star turned keynote speaker and author. I toured for about 20 years or so with a band called Big Kettle Drum. Pause for applause. Thank you. We've played in Europe. I used to come over and play the Greenbelt Festival over there quite frequently back in the early 2000s, maybe 2003 to 2008-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah, did that for almost 2 decades. Sort of was becoming a dinosaur in the music world, age-wise, and decided I didn't want to be on tour. At that point. Yeah, I didn't want to be on tour, for months at a time, and so I transitioned from sort of one platform to another, and started to be a keynote speaker, and that's been going now about 9 years. And in the midst of speaking, you start to develop some, I would say, some pretty strong opinions here and there, and so decided to write a book called Black Sheep in 2020 that did well enough to sort of give me a large platform that I can continue to speak. And so we are here today.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things we probably need to delve into just for pure interest's sake more than anything else, because I don't think we've had a rock star on the show before. And I did the little bunny rabbit ears, inverted commas. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like we should probably delve into this a little bit.
Sure.
Just if nothing else, just for stories and, life on the road. And, it's everybody's dream, right? To be loose, fancy free rock star.
That's right. I mean, eating at a gas station at 2 o'clock in the morning and trying to make it to the next gig before set up time. And yeah, I was pretty old before I even started my music career. So I was 30 and at the time was the vice president of business development for the largest commercial collection agency in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I
Well,
had this
that's a bit of a
calling.
sea change.
Yeah. Yeah. Leaving the big paying job to go be a struggling musician didn't go over very well with anybody.
Really? Really? I wonder why.
But it served as an incredible, to almost 20 years. I sort of did this singer songwriter thing for a few years when I started in 2003, and was introduced to another musician through a concert promoter who really just wanted to play guitar. And so that was JT Keel. He joined my band, and we were over playing in England at the Greenbelt Festival, and met up with an Australian band over there called River Tribe, who was also playing. And they were breaking up, and so their percussionist didn't have anything to do, and so we invited him to join, and we sort of started our first band called Fort Pastor, and became the sort of the most booked band in the college market back in '06, '07, and ended up signing our first major record deal with the two other guys there. The band was called Fort Pastor, and we toured for about a year or two, and then decided we didn't want to do another record with that label, and we all sort of took a little break. And so Jono, our Aussie, moved back to Melbourne, and I became the artist in residence for the Not for Sale campaign, which is a group that fights human trafficking all over the world. And I sort of, me and the founder, David Batstone of that organization, we would do this show together in sort of theaters and schools all over the country, really all over the world. We toured Australia twice, and I would do a concert. He would tell the story of how he stumbled upon slavery in his favorite restaurant in San Francisco.
Oh, wow. Right.
And yeah, and it sort of become a backyard abolitionist and support the program. And they work with, survivors all over the world, helping sort of get them to safety, and then employ them and give them a chance to make a living. And just an incredible organization. And I did that for almost 3 years, and was sort of winding down my commitment with them. We had a tour that was like a 17 dates and 18 days with 4 other rock bands, and me and my acoustic guitar, which just felt weird. And I didn't want to be John Denver, so I was like, let's see if we can't put something together. So I called my old bandmate JT, and we put together this sort of swampy blues rock thing called Big Kettle Drum that was just going to be for 17 shows. That's all it was. By the fourth show, we had sold out of merch. By the sixth show, we had a drummer.
Nice.
By the end of the tour, we had a new record deal and toured for 10 more years. So it was not
Right.
exactly how I had planned it, but it just sort of happened that way. And decided towards the tail end of that I wanted to be off the road and not touring for weeks and months on end. And so sort of transitioned from one platform to another. And instead of rocking out in front of thousands of people, I decided to just speak to them instead. And so moved over to the keynote speaking side of things, and initially talked about collaboration and used music as my vehicle to teach people how to be better collaborators.
Right. I've seen a piece on your website actually about collaboration versus cooperation.
Cooperation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
concept. But I mean, how many of us actually think about actually what is cooperation versus collaboration?
Yeah. Cooperation only requires one thing, and that's compliance. And compliance feels like shit. Nobody wants to just be compliant to everything. And so, unfortunately, most organizations are really good at cooperating, but not so great at collaborating. And so that's where I started my speaking career, is in that little niche, and eventually it expanded into, you know, discovering your non-negotiable values and how do you use those to be deliberate with your intention.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. There's something I want to explore about your transition from I suppose, a high paying corporate job into something which I can only assume must have been a pursuit of passion of some description. Like you said it was you had a calling to become
Mm.
a musician. So was this you kind of having an awakening, as it were, into actually, do you know what? I need to start pursuing the things that give me joy.
Um, it was a spiritual thing for me in the beginning. I, you know, I had a pretty rocky relationship with God when I was a kid, and just not quite understanding. I had planned on playing professional baseball. That was my only dream, and
Right.
was well on my way of doing that, and ended up getting hurt and having to quit the thing that I love the most. And so, I was pretty upset with God for not allowing me to pursue this thing that I wanted. And so, sort of in college, I sort of had this aha that maybe God wanted me to do something else that was more important than playing baseball. And so I started to sort of get into that. Had a really bad experience with just church politics, and walked away. And fast forward, almost 10 years, sort of felt like I needed to come back and explore that more now that I was old enough to truly understand and lived long enough to have some opinions, and sort of felt this calling to do music ministry when it first started, and which was honestly not. It was awkward to me. I didn't want to do it. I felt called to do it, and when you feel called to do something and you don't do it, you feel disobedient. And I hated waking up every day feeling like that. And so I just decided I'd give it a go. And it wasn't easy. That's for damn sure. And the sort of discovering that the when I first started, the Christian music world is far more judgmental than the general market.
Really? Right.
They don't just judge your music; they judge your morality.
Right.
So
Yeah, on your message.
it was just the right idea, the wrong vehicle for me. And so I sort of pivoted from that, and that's sort of how it all started anyways back then. With that calling was literally more of a spiritual thing for me to just feel like I was doing what I thought I should be doing. And if it worked, then great. If it didn't, at least I answered the call and tried to make something work.
Yeah. God, that's really fascinating, actually, and that speaks to me in terms of about from a humanistic perspective, like our ability to reinvent.
Mm.
And I also am a massive believer that we do not give ourselves enough credit in our ability to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
And I suppose probably everybody can recount a time whereby they've been forced to reinvent through circumstance or
Sure.
whatever. But and I remember seeing something on somebody else's podcast. I think it was the Diary of a CEO, and he had a mindfulness doctor or something like that on, and they were talking about the danger of us, I suppose, branding ourselves as something. So
Yeah.
branding ourselves as, in my case, a recruiter.
Hmm.
In your case, you're a VP of whatever it
Hmm.
was that you were business development,
Yep.
and then that's taken away from you before you're ready. We all have the capability to pivot away from that and reinvent ourselves and do something else.
Yeah.
And it certainly feels from the outside looking in like you've had a couple of reinventions through your life to get to where you are now.
No question. My life was consumed with baseball when I was a kid, all the way into college, right? Like I didn't want to be a doctor or an architect or, a lawyer or any of the things that people, sort of have these dreams about. So when I got out of school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did a million different things. I literally have probably had more jobs than anyone who has ever been on your podcast.
Yeah.
I mean,
All of the
I,
guests put together.
like I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I tried everything. I was in advertising. I studied to be a gemologist. I, sold solar hot water heaters. I sold air conditioners. I sold water treatment systems door to door. I did all of these things to try to discover what I felt sort of called to do, and didn't really have any success in figuring it out. The crazy thing is I had success in every single thing I did, but it still didn't fill that hole that was there from not being able to play baseball.
Yeah.
So in the search for filling that void is, I think, where music eventually stepped in.
Right, yeah, and also this does speak to, what you have become now, and you probably talk about similar things when there's all manner of stuff I'm sure you talk about on stage, depending on the audience that you've got to deliver the set to. But having read your book, and let's talk about the book. Let's talk about
Sure.
Black Sheep. And great tagline, by the way. Is it? I don't know if you call it a tagline in the US, but unleash the extraordinary, awe-inspiring, undiscovered you.
Yes.
I mean, that's a hook.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Yeah. We were pretty happy the day that we landed on that. It was a good day.
Yeah, I mean, you could have gone a bit bigger, maybe.
Uh, I could have spelled you EWE,
Hey,
which I initially thought of, but then I'm like, there's a little too much cheese in that. I think for the general
yeah,
market,
you're
people
speaking
wouldn't
my
know what the
language
hell I
now.
was talking about. So yes,
Yeah, and actually, you and Jim. As I guess I alluded to Jim earlier. Jim's a friend of the show. I called him your work husband, as you used to be. You did
yes,
your podcast together, and you were very kind enough to invite me on your show. And I think I remember I divulged what I divulged on that show. If people want to read about that, or learn about that, they can go and look up the episode. I'll maybe put that in the show notes. But you unleashed like your principle around values to me in that chat, and it
hmm
really resonated with me, and that's what made me then go, well, actually this guy talks a bit of sense. I'm gonna go buy his book. And yeah, so talk to me about where I suppose a lot of the time when you write a book, it comes from your own experience of things and the
yeah,
things that you've picked up along the way. So
yeah.
how did you arrive at this, which for to me makes like it's such a wonderful amount of sense when somebody maps it out like this to you. But how do you arrive there in the first place?
For me, it was born out of just a horrendous experience. My oldest son, Theo, was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer when he was 14 and needed a bone marrow transplant to survive. And that was just a harrowing experience. We lived in a
Yeah.
hospital for 263 straight days with him battling. And, I had reached this crossroads with him in his journey that the doctors thought he wasn't going to make it through the night. And so they send me back to his room to, say my goodbyes. And I had no idea what to say or what to do. My emotions were, as you can imagine, were just like a tornado. And so I made some really what I consider to be bad decisions in those moments because I didn't know what my non negotiables were. And when you let your emotions drive the bus, the chance of that bus ending up in a ditch are pretty good. And, I ended up saying my goodbyes, but Theo ended up surviving through this miracle. And, I should have been thrilled that this is the case. But I actually, for a very long time, went to bed every night, sort of beating myself up, asking myself if I wonder if he thinks I gave up on him, and that bothered me a lot. And so I decided that I needed to figure out these things that matter most to me. So if I ever faced that scenario again, I'd be in a much better position. And so I did. I did the research and I dug deep and I figured out what my non negotiables were. And I figured out that they were creativity and hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity, all these things that are my non negotiables that I simply will not move from. Just like a black sheep's wool can't be dyed, these values can't be changed. And once I figured it out and started to live my life through those values, I watched my career explode, right? So in a good way. So I was named one of the top 10 speakers, motivational speakers in the country. Started to see my speaking gigs multiply by 5x and my fees by 3x, and all the success that started to come with it. And so I decided I would sort of explain what I did and how I did it for people so that they could experience the same thing. And in the process of all that, we released the book in 2020. It becomes a hit and has been translated into 6 or 7 different languages now.
Nice.
And, you know, unfortunately, I ended up having that sort of second opportunity as COVID hit, in 2021. Unfortunately, Theo catches it in January, and February 27th, we lose him to this combination of COVID and his body just
Oh
being,
God, bless you.
riddled with battling cancer for 9 years. So I found myself on the edge of the bed, having the same sort of scenario put to me that I had years prior, of having to say my goodbyes. But this time I didn't say my goodbyes. I said what I wanted to say, and I, lifted those values up and threw them into him as much as I could. And, obviously didn't have the outcome that I wanted, but uh, I was also not beating myself up at night for what I didn't do. And so I felt good about that, and it's been a battle since then, to sort of move forward. And that's, honestly, this new book is all about how I was able to pull myself out of being in a really bad place, and how do you build some momentum when you've placed yourself on an island and detached from everything and everyone. And so, that's sort of how that whole thing transpired. And, the book has helped now. I think we have over 500,000 data points, from people who have taken the assessment on the website. So, it makes me feel really good that we've helped people discover what their non-negotiables are, and hopefully, they're able to start living their lives with that deliberate intention that changes what's possible.
Yeah, goodness. I knew that you'd been through some adversity before. I had no idea that that had transpired into what it then became.
Yeah,
And I can only imagine what you've been through as a result of that. But in terms of do you think that by writing this book, in a weird way, it kind of saved you in that moment then, because you had done the work on yourself?
yeah, yeah. I'm not a therapy guy, but I have said, time and time again, that it would have been way cheaper for me to just go to therapy than to write this book. um, but yeah, I mean, it absolutely did, for all of the negative sort of things that have come from that journey. This is really one of the powerful things, and it's about legacy now for me. And one of the things that had happened that sort of changed everything for me, and allowed me to move forward, was, I had sort of removed myself from the world, in almost every way I could, for about 18 months after Theo passed. And one of my inner circle friends, called me up, and he's like, "Look, I know you're in a bad place. I'm really sorry you had to experience this, but I want to tell you something." He said, I don't know if you know this, but I believe that when you die, you really die twice. The first is when, you leave this earth, but the second is when your name is spoken for the last time. So what I want to know is, what are you doing to make sure Theo's second life outlives his first? Because this wallowing isn't going to get it done. And that was like that hip check into the boards that I needed, to sort of break away from that depression and isolation, and start to think about legacy, and what is it that I want to leave behind? How do I want Theo's story to continue to impact people long after I'm gone? And so that's what got me into, how do you build momentum? How do you, design momentum so that the impact you have, allows your second life to outlive your first? And that's sort of what's brought me to where I am today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what I would say about the book, again, for anybody listening who's interested, and I would just say, go and buy a copy. And that's not trying to blow smoke up your backside. I'm quite happy to do that as well, of course. But the there's a lot of practical exercises to kind of carry out in the book as well, in terms of things that you can just, with a blank sheet of paper and the instruction in the book, you can go away and learn a mountain of stuff about yourself, and then what that really means. And then, you kind of, I suppose, as your words are, you've then got your non-negotiables, the things that you really stand for, and that regardless of what goes on around you, these are the unshakable parts of
Yeah.
you that cannot be changed.
Yeah. My goal, I don't consider myself an author, even though I'm now 2 books in. I just, I consider myself a musician who is simply now
Who happens
writing
to?
something different. But, my goal when I write is to write dressed up common sense. And that's what connects, in my opinion. The deep thinkers, you want to learn the deep science behind things and have words that I can't even pronounce. I'm not your guy. If you want to, read something that is sort of somewhere between no shit and, oh, that's interesting, then, that's where I live. Because sometimes I feel like, you know, all I know is from my own experience. And, in the music business, when someone from the label comes and says, we want to sign a band that's completely original, we want them to be no one's ever heard anything like it. That's just complete and utter bullshit on every level. That's not what they want. What they want is something that sounds like something else, but feels different. That's what they want. They
Right.
want somebody that they can go, well, if it sort of sounds like the Foo Fighters, or it sounds like U2, but it feels a little bit different, because they need something to compare it to be able to have our brains know where to put it. And so when it comes to writing books, I try to take that same approach. I want you to read something that sounds familiar but feels different. And if I accomplish that, then that's all I can ask for. Whether or not anyone gets anything out of it, I just want them to read things that sound familiar but feels different and hits them in a different way.
Yeah, you've nailed it, and certainly in my view, because I think as well you also have anecdotes from your own experience as well to kind of give context to the theory behind what you're writing about, I
Yeah.
suppose. And that's, to me, I have a massive belief that anecdotes are the keyhole to everything, or the gateway to everything. Not the keyhole. That's would that be a saying? Keyhole? Well, we can make it a
Could be.
saying. It's dressed up common sense. That's what it is.
That's it. I'm telling you.
That's my saying of the day. That I love. I'm
Yeah.
going to just write a book on dressed up common sense. I mean, that's a winner.
It's palatable. People know how to consume common sense, and if you dress it up a little bit so that it looks a little bit different and it feels a little bit different, then what they get out of it changes. And that to me is the most effective way of doing it. I don't want to write something so heady that you got to go, look up words that I'm using so that you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
I want to write something that you go, I had not thought about it that way before. Like that's all I'm trying to do. And I feel personally, those are the books that we all love. Those are the ones that become huge bestsellers. It's not that they are some, never been written before thing. It's that it just resonates with you in a different way. And that's why people talk about it.
yeah, absolutely. And that puts you in the same league as Simon Sinek, right? Or Sinek, or how do you
Yeah.
pronounce his name? I've got no idea.
Sinek. Yeah.
It's
Simon
Sinek, is it?
Sinek.
Depends who you speak
Yes.
to.
Yeah. He's, I've got a history with Simon. That's fun.
Oh, there's a story
You know,
there.
yeah, I'm trying to decide whether or not to tell it.
Okay. Then you definitely should.
I'm going to say this. Simon is a brilliant man. He wrote this book called Start With Why that became this massive bestseller. And I agree 100% that you should start with why, if your why is right.
Right.
And my challenge to that book is, when you don't know if your why is right, you waste a lot of time heading in the wrong direction that cost a lot of time and money that end up leading you nowhere, rather than starting with what is what I feel like it should have been. Start with what? What are those non-negotiables? Because your purpose is an amplification of those values. It's your non-negotiable values in action that is your purpose. And if your purpose statement for your life does not include these non-negotiable values, they are misaligned, and you will not be able to have the impact that you want. You will have to wait for luck or accident for them to align, and that is no place that anyone really wants to be. So start with what, and then move to your why. Yes, is what I will say about that.
Yeah, I've absolutely no issue at all with that challenge, because I completely agree with you. There is no point in, why am I doing this, if you don't
Yeah.
understand, really who you are and what you stand for in the first place,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Start with why. My why would, in my dream world, my why
Yeah.
would be, I score a hat trick in the Champions League final for Liverpool,
Yeah.
and okay, how does the what affect that? Well, when I'm 46 years old, that's probably not going to happen anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it was ever going to happen in the first place,
Yeah.
and so on. So I kind of get it. I think the point I was making about was Simon. I'm just going to call him first name terms. If you're listening, Simon, I'm available for podcast discussions anytime,
Yes.
is that I think where his real talent is, and I think he might have even spoken about this somewhere, is actually, it's not necessarily in the concept of start with why. It's the ability to take a concept
Mhm.
and use language to get it across to the layman, to the average, ordinary, everyday person like me, who can't take big words and, I mean, I probably could with a little bit of gumption, but who's got time to go and learn big words, right? You want to be taught.
Some would call that dressed up common sense.
Exactly. Yes, indeed. But yeah,
Yes.
so that's why I was saying I put you in that league with him, because
I'll take it.
but
Listen, as I said, if I end up, with half the success of Simon, I will not be
I'll be a happy
complaining.
man.
So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So your public speaking came before the book.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I would imagine the public speaking, was that something that was speaking to the performance side of you, the person who likes to perform to people.
Yeah. The control freak in me. Yes. It speaks dramatically to, as much as I love being in a band, when you have to rely on anybody other than yourself, it makes it, in baseball I pitched. So ideally, if I do my
Right.
job,
Center of
nobody else
attention.
has to do theirs. Right. And so that's the environment of which I was raised. And so even in a band that I loved playing in, you know, I, I have a hard time letting go control to anybody else for anything. So this was an easy switch for me that fed that control freak in me that allowed me to sort of focus on the performance and have total control of the audience without worrying about somebody missing a note or doing something that they shouldn't be doing or whatever that looks like. The success of the talk is 100% dependent upon me and only me, and that's a comfortable place for me to be.
Yeah. Right. Talk to me about your first public speaking gig, because it's a different kind of performance, right, from what you're used to doing.
Yeah.
And I think everybody speaks about this, is in any kind of performance, is it doesn't really matter how long you do these things, you still get, the little churning of the stomach just before you go on. Have I really got it all in the position that I was supposed to? Am I supposed to, blah, blah, blah. And are the audience going to react? Do I react to them? There's all this stuff that just goes on in the head. The first time you stepped up on stage, what was the gig? And yeah, describe your feeling as you took the stage that time.
When I first started speaking, I was working with an organization called Banding People Together, and it was a bunch of guys who were sort of like me. We had some moderate success to in the music world, that you are making your living as an artist, or songwriters who have had hit songs. And we would do these collaboration sort of workshops with people, and it started with what basically was a 45-minute keynote about collaboration. And that's sort of where I started and how I first started doing what I was doing. And for me, the one thing I noticed when I moved from music to public speaking is that there are two types of people who speak. There are presenters and speakers. Presenters present information, and they can be really good and make a lot of money just presenting information that is interesting. Speakers uh, leave enough space to capture the truth in the room, and there are very few people who do that. I can count them on maybe a hand and a half that I know of, and this is a very tight knit world of public speaking.
Mm,
Um, I would venture to guess 98.9% of people are presenters, and they present the information. But if the slides go down, if the power goes out, they're dead in the water,
right.
and they become incredibly uncomfortable. A speaker owns their material to the point that they don't need shit. They don't need, I mean, you're using things to strengthen your delivery. You're using things to make sure people remember things, but it's not needed. It is just an asset. It's a tool. And if the room shifts, if something doesn't hit, you're able to pivot, and you don't have to be beholden to your slide or to this or to that. You can move with the room and allow the truth to be spoken and address the truth in the room. And there are so few people who are willing to do that. They're too scared of what answer might come or what question might be raised or what, they're not prepared. And that's my favorite part. My favorite part is in the interaction with the crowd. My favorite part is not knowing what's going to happen, because that's capturing lightning in a bottle. That's what makes you great. It's what makes people remember the session. It's not some canned speech that you've memorized that you're going to deliver, 70 times over the next year. It's in the unknown, the uncertainty, that things get fun. And so for me, that is what I remember, is even in my very first gig, is leaving enough space to capture that truth in the room so that it felt special, that it felt unique. And it's something that I've strived to do in every gig since then.
Yeah, I love that. I'm guessing as well that it's almost then that every performance is different, because actually you've got to be able to go where the room almost kind of wants slash needs you to go, rather than you
Yes.
going, here is what I have, goodbye.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. That is exactly what it is. And if you can do it and do it well, there there is no competition. There's just not. You become one of a kind in that way, and things that are one of a kind don't have competition.
very good. Like black sheep.
Hmm.
Mhm, very good. I'm making notes here. I'm making notes. Let's go back to books, because
Yeah.
obviously we have spoken about the second book, which is in process at the moment. In terms of well, your deadline is not far away.
I got like, yeah, 8 days, I think 9 days. I got 9 days left.
Yeah, have you started yet?
Yeah, I'm halfway through. I'm halfway through. So it's it's not bad, but it is. I'm at the chapter a day point right now. So yes, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So this is all about building momentum. What was the name? Sorry, I did make a note of
Designing
it.
momentum. Yeah,
Designing momentum. There it is. Yeah.
yeah.
And whilst I suppose it's not a sequel to Black Sheep, it's probably
Mhm.
useful that you go through that process first, and then pick up this book whenever
Yeah,
it comes back.
there are definite bridges that connect the two together. You have to sort of, yeah, I should say this. You don't have to know what your non-negotiables are, but if you do, you're going to be far more effective in what this book is going to tell you to do.
Yeah.
This is really about understanding. I believe there's three different stages of momentum that we dip in and out of over the course of our lives, right? There's the living stage, which is sort of survival mode, right? You're only living moment to moment and trying to figure out how you're paying for rent or going to buy food for the evening or groceries or whatever that is. That's the living phase, and we often see that when we are fresh out of school and you're starting into the workforce for the first time, or sometimes you end up, you know, getting hit pretty hard, losing your job, whatever that might look like, and you have to shift to that living phase where you're in survival mode. The second stage is lifting, and this is where you are just compelled to lift yourself out of that survival mode, and you do whatever it takes to get there. And then the third is legacy, which is that legacy stage is about building momentum for other people. And over the course of our lives, this isn't a linear progression. It's something that we sort of dip in and out of these stages depending upon what life looks like at any given time. And it begins that this idea of designing momentum begins with what stage you're in. Can you identify the stage that you're in right now? And sometimes you straddle two at the same time. Sometimes you're trying to lift yourself up, and while you're lifting yourself up, you're helping somebody else, and so you're in that lifting legacy combination. And so understanding what those stages are sort of becomes the bedrock for how we're going to build the momentum needed to hit those big goals. And so that's where the book sort of starts, and then it moves into things like mindset and there's sort of a 4-part framework of building momentum. And then it talks about those moments that are bigger than life, and how do you use those moments to catapult yourself toward your goal in a much faster fashion than these everyday moments that we can take advantage of.
Yeah, this is what I think I love. I'm just going to make an assumption here about what this book will be, having read your first book, is that this is what I love about your writing style. And you say that you're not an author, you're just somebody who happens to write, but you definitely are, because you have a style that leaves value on the table for people. In terms of, and it's up to them whether they want to pick up that value and run with it, or decide not to. And I would assume that this book will also have you know exercises for people to actually go through a process to be able to find something out about themselves, or to be
Yeah,
able to put the next steps of something in motion, however small that step might be.
100%, all the way through. Every chapter, the exercises are broken into these little take a moment sections. The idea behind the book is that the way to build momentum is to focus on individual moments and not on a grand plan. The way that the grand plan is going to happen is by making the most out of individual moments. And so it focuses on something I call momentum, which is, can you build enough momentum in a single moment to carry yourself to where you want to go? And so that's what the book teaches. And it's laden with exercises of through each section as to how to do that successfully, so that you might not have to wait 5 years to hit your 5 year goal. You could possibly do it much sooner and reach a goal that's much larger.
Love it. Yeah, yeah. And this is why I was very keen to have you. One, because you're a great conversationalist anyway. You're kind of used to doing these. I mean, how many podcasts did you do on Thoughts That Rock?
A couple hundred there, and then I've done hundreds of my own of being a guest. So it's we're touching that 300 or 400 now, I'm sure.
Right. And yeah, is that it seems to me like you are also you're one of life's elevators. Like you take energy from elevating things, from whether that's the human in front of you in the
Yeah,
moment that you're in, or whether it's something else, whatever it is that you're coming into. And that, as somebody who is aspiring to be one of those people, well, I'm not aspiring, I am. I know that I take energy from elevating people
mm,
and things. That's why I thought that this would be a wonderful echo chamber of a discussion that we could have
agreed,
about.
agreed.
But I just am a big believer, and this is me just imparting my own experience, I suppose, into the world, is that nothing great happens by tearing everything down all the time, right? And that is kind of the world that we live in at the moment. It feels
Yeah,
like a little bit, and we were talking before we switched the microphone on
yeah,
around our respective territories at the moment are
yeah,
very polarized,
yeah,
and you've got to be one thing or another,
yeah,
and there's no gray area in between, and you get shot down by either side for just having an opinion that might be slightly different.
yeah.
So it needs more of us to fight back against the tearing down, to build people back up and build the world back up. And I know that sounds very lofty and all of that kind of thing, but
Mm,
I totally believe in that.
I agree. Listen, I look at it like, as polarized as it is in the world right now, what's really on the ends of each of the sides is just emotion. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what's on both sides, is emotion. But what's in the middle is the values. And if we just focused on those shared values that we have, I think we would find that we're not as far apart as we think we are. It's the emotions that get involved that make us extreme on both sides. And so the idea for me, and this is part of my, I long to live long enough to experience a day where a politician tells me about what they really care about. What are their non-negotiable values? I've
yeah,
never heard it from anyone ever.
yeah,
I've only heard rhetoric about what they think people want to hear. And what I want to know is what matters to you. That's what I want to know. Because if we share similar values, I can get behind that.
yeah,
But if you never tell anybody the things that are your non-negotiables, how is anyone supposed to know where you're going to stand? And the reason that they don't do that is because then they have something to be held accountable to. And it doesn't feel good when you are constantly breaking your word if you have said X, Y, and Z are my non negotiable values and your voting record does not reflect that. And
yeah,
so it's, it's, it's a precarious position, but I believe it's the future of politics is to just tell people what matters to you and promise people, I hate the plans. Don't tell me plans, because I know all the plans are bullshit.
yeah,
The plans are not going to happen because the plans require both sides agreeing. So don't tell me the plans, because I know the plan is not going to look the way that you say it's going to look, if it happens at all. Tell me about what you care about so that I know we're on the same page for the things that I want to see moved and changed. I know the plan will be figured out sometime later, because when you get into where you want to be, you realize none of it works the way you thought it did. And
yeah,
so the plans that you had planned aren't actual plans at all. Those were called wishes. And you have to let go of the wishes and now actually form a real plan based on shared values. And that is the truth. And I just wish someone would speak up and say it.
here, here, man. I mean, yeah, God Almighty. And the other thing is, and the other thing, I sound like a ranter now, but is that it seems that they spend more time talking about how bad the other side are rather than how good they could be or should be, and all of that comes down to, well, it's way easier to talk shit about somebody else, right, than it is to hold yourself
Again,
accountable to
it's an accountability issue. That's
yeah,
exactly why they do it. When you talk shit about somebody else, you don't have to hold yourself accountable to anything,
yeah,
right? And that's the unfortunate underbelly of politics. No matter if it's here, there, or Papua New Guinea, it all looks the same.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So elevators unite out
Yes,
there. I'm
you
starting a
bet.
community. That's what I'm going to do. Actually, do you know what? I might do that. But anyway, when can people expect the book then? Obviously, you're going to finish it in 8 days.
June, June of next year. The reason that I have to finish it in 8 days is so that it can come out in June. It takes 8 months to get into when you're dealing with a massive traditional publisher. Wiley is the biggest publisher in the world now. So, you got to get into the machine, and the machine takes 8 months to spit out a baby. So, I've got to get that thing in there by the 1st of November. So it will come out at the end of June is the goal right now.
Right. Got you. I assume, is it first draft that you're delivering and then it goes through 12
Correct.
editors? Or
Manuscript gets delivered. They beat it up for a month, and then by January, though, really by the end of December, it's etched in stone, and it's just getting through the gates of publishing.
right. And you've got a book that's then called Start With Why. Basically, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
we think you should do this, Brant. Um,
Yes.
no, I'm sure it's not like that. But yeah, great. I mean, the other thing that you do obviously is coaching, and I made a kind of a bit of a joke about this when I was on your show about it felt like you coached me in that, and I felt like I was having a session because everything you were talking to me was like completely resonating, and I was like, yeah,
Mm,
just making sense. Like everything that I've been through now makes a bit more sense because of that session
awesome.
that you gave me. So,
Yeah.
um, where does that come from? Because I again, that's something that I suppose you don't have a formal background in, but I think
Yeah.
any of us who care about anything, we kind of coach on a day-to-day basis, right? But whether you
Yeah.
kind of know you are or not. So, how did you formalize your coaching?
In the sort of proving process of Black Sheep, of what I thought was real and being real, I had a group of 40 people that we walked with for 5 weeks through this program to get their lives straight, and so that gave me a lot of sort of man hours into the coaching process of what that looks like and how it works, and just making sure that what I am suggesting is something valuable. And so that's where that started. And now, I do it sparsely. I do, executive coaching when time allots, but it's tough because it's not something that you can half-heartedly approach. You've got to go in longing for change, and if you are in that mindset, then I'm with you. If you are tiptoeing your water in there, it's going to be an uncomfortable experience, because I am a cannonball kind of a guy. I am not a dip your toe in the water. I'm a throw you in the water, and I'll jump in and get you if I feel like you're drowning. Like that's sort of how it goes. And so I said I do it. We've got maybe 3 or 4 clients right now that we work with, but outside of that, it's not the main focus. And it just, honestly, it takes a lot of emotional investment that, unfortunately, at the time right now, I don't have a ton of emotional investment available. But when I do have it, it brings me great joy to see that impact, right? That's that elevator piece. I want the proof that what I'm doing is working, because that's what keeps me going every day.
Absolutely, and I think I mean, your own story is also I suppose an indication to anyone that's listening out there that out of the really shit stuff that happens to us all, because it's inevitable that shit stuff happens to us all
Yeah.
in some form, is that some really amazing things can happen on the back of it. And
Truth.
sometimes you've got to walk through the crap to end up smelling the roses. Is that the saying?
Agreed.
Something like that?
Agreed. No, agree 100% with that. Yep.
But a lot of the time, I think maybe a lot of us place too much expectation on ourselves to be able to get there on our own. And having walked through that journey myself and experienced help from somebody else to help me get there, I could not speak highly enough of reaching out for help
Mm.
in any form, like to help you get through whatever it is that you're going through.
Agreed. Agreed.
I don't want this to become a mental health podcast. We're not ready for that yet. Um,
Could be.
yeah,
Yes.
no, indeed. But great. Well, look, Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the very best. I don't think you're not going to need luck with your next book. If your
Oh,
first book's anything to go by, this is nailed on another winner. And
I
I very much
appreciate
look
that.
forward to that when it comes out.
I appreciate it, brother. When it's out, we'll do this again. I'd love to have you read it, and we can have a discussion about what you think.
Let's do it. I'm
Awesome.
game.
Look forward to it.
Nice one. Thanks, Brant.
You bet. Talk soon.
Cheers. And there we have it. I can't tell you how good it was to get some time with Brant, and I'd encourage you to get a hold of a copy of Black Sheep at your earliest opportunity. It's a cracker of a book, and I, for one, will be looking forward to his next book later in the year. We will, of course, be back at 8 p.m. next Wednesday with another cracking story from hospitality. So until then, have a great week, and we'll see you then.